Thank you very much, Marilyn. I appreciate your taking time to join us today. I'm going to change the program up just a little bit. I was going to ask each of our area heads to stand up and introduce their staff members. Some of these staff members are relatively new, but thankfully for me, many of them have been in their positions at a considerable length of time, and that makes serving in an interim role a lot easier than it otherwise would be. But in consideration of the time that we have available for this session, and I want to leave time for the panel to address the larger issue of the Graduate Enrollment Management Plan draft, I'm going to just quickly call the names of each of the staff members, and if they're here, if they just stand up when their name's called, I think that would probably be the most expeditious way to accomplish that. So in the Dean's office, the Administrative Assistant to the Dean, would she please stand up? Oh my gosh, there's no one here. That position was vacated by Renee Henniker, as many of you know. And some of you that called that number are still surprised that her replacement hasn't been found. I'll tell you, we're interviewing this week and next week. We do have a temp that's come over, Catherine Nelson. She is answering that extension. We haven't updated all of the places in which you find Renee's name, but they will be as soon as the permanent person's put in place. Center for Excellence in Scholarship and Research. Dan Houlihan, would you stand, Dan? Most people know you. You've been here a long time. You served ably in that role, and anyone who's worked with him knows that that's the case. The Office of Graduate Studies, Chris Mickle, the Director. He's been here equally long period of time, so those of you that work with him know how valuable he is. Joan Miller, would you stand up? Student Records and System Coordinator. Thank you. And Elaine Rush, for those of you who don't know, has retired. Last week, I believe, was her last week with us. We're in the process of filling that position. Elaine, I've worked with her for as long as I've been a member of the institution. It's a loss, but we'll move forward. And then we have the newest person in the Grad Studies office, Jennifer Shellstrom, who's serving as the Interim Associate Director for Recruitment and Retention. So you'll learn more about her role as we move forward. I have a few words to say about that later today in my remarks. The Honors Program, as many of you know, Ann Gallman has served ably in that role, but she's serving as the Acting Dean of Global Education. And the Interim Honors Director, Leah White, is Leah here? She's working with honors students, so she is the Interim Honors Director. I encourage you to reach out to her if there's anything that you may mutually wish to work on together. Jean Walters, is Jean here? She's Fellowship Coordinator, Assistant Director of Honors. And then the Administrative Assistant in that area is Pam Gus. She's recently assumed her responsibilities. Institutional Review Board is ably led by Dr. Mary Hadley, who served as the director for a number of years. I really enjoyed the opportunity to get to know Mary a little better than I had before assuming this role. Research and Sponsored Programs, Christelle Seth, Director. Please stand, Christelle. Thank you. Many of you have worked with her. Jeannie McGraw, Grant Specialist and Post-Award Coordinator. Thank you. And Ann Ludwig, the Grant Specialist. I thought she was here, maybe not. Okay. Ann is making contributions as well that are valued. Kuldeep Agarwal is the Undergraduate Research Center Director, and as I said, Jeannie Walters is the Fellowship Coordinator. So I really appreciate having a team like that in place. I realize that several of those areas don't overlap with graduate faculty, but nonetheless, they have research, ties to research, ties to scholarship, and ties to the kinds of things that we needed to be doing both with undergraduates and graduate students. So, my remarks are informal, and they're organized around three themes today. And these are such extraordinary times, they call for extraordinary efforts. And I believe that if we organize our stories more effectively, they have the power to influence and to highlight the important work we do as as educators and scholars, and they help others appreciate how higher education contributes to the greater good. And because of these extraordinary times, I think there's some doubt. I think there are questions about what our role as educators and scholars really are for the larger society and for the students that choose to study with us. So today I had organized things around modern tetralogy, and I was going to convey, and will, a convocation story, since this is kind of a convocation of sorts. And then I was going to convey very briefly our university story using some technology that has failed both the PC and the Mac that I had set it up on. So it's actually going to be a trilogy, probably, rather than a tetralogy, but nonetheless, I vividly remember my first college convocation. I arrived on campus the week before classes, much like many of us do on a year like this, and was both exhilarated and terrified by the prospect of teaching graduate courses to students who in many cases were older than I.
Yep.
It's not a problem for me now, but it was then. How could I compensate for my youth and inexperience? I thought about that a lot for the weeks I arrived on campus. And this is a grainy photo that both obscures, thankfully, some of the distinctions between what I looked like then and what I look like now. And so I apologize for that, but it's taken directly off my first faculty ID card. So when you blow it up in an environment like this, it tends to lose some of the clarity. But growing a full beard was my answer to the credibility question. And I thought it was kind of interesting because my wife Toshiko the other day saw this for the first time in many years. And she said, "Hey, that's the guy I married." And she's absolutely right, it was. But he's been missing for, an awful long time. There's no chance he's coming back. So, we just need to move on. Convocation that year was held in that building there. And on the far end of that upper balcony was a beautiful auditorium. And so this is on a quintessential collegiate quadrangle. And I'm a brand new faculty member. I take my seat near the window so I can have a view of that quadrangle, but a great line of sight to the podium. And so Dean Robert Barr was a towering Texan whose bearing commanded the respect of everyone, and he was about to speak to us. He rose from his chair, he placed both hands on the podium, he leaned forward for effect, and he boomed, "The future is not what it used to be." And for the next 30 minutes, Dean Barr delivered a powerful personal testimony to the ability of a public university to change lives of those it touches. Dean Barr was born in West Texas during a time when cotton was king and the size of the crop and its price affected the family's economic fortunes. Like many cotton farmers in Texas during the 1930s, Robert's father didn't own the land he farmed. Rather, he paid the man who did own it 25% of every harvest for the right to work the land. That's what we call a sharecrop farmer or a share tenant farmer. And cotton was a commodity with a price that changed wildly depending upon supply and demand. Dean Barr said as a kid, he saw how the world was changing, and he knew the future was not what it used to be. The world was becoming more interdependent, more interconnected, and what happened in West Texas wasn't as important anymore as what happened in Egypt in terms of his family's fortunes. So he focused on school. He did well. He graduated from high school and he went on to college. He said the day he received his acceptance letter was the happiest day He said, Papa, I'm going to Purdue. Demar said his father paused. He looked down at the soil beneath both their feet. He looked up at the horizon and squinted a little bit. And then he looked at young Robert. Son, he said, why in the world would you want to go to Peru? As you might imagine, neither Purdue nor Peru were part of his father's world. And my point is this, it's absolutely true that the future is not what it used to be. It's a future where education, research, scholarship, and creative activity play a critical role. And it's a world where disciplined inquiry is cultivated through excellent educational preparation, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level. It's a world where academic success forms the foundation for careers that affect not only our lives, but the lives of others. It's a world where knowledge improves the human condition and artistic expression improves the quality of the human experience. And each of us has an important role to play in the future of our students, our state, our region, and our nation. And this is where we break to the video that's loaded on the website that tells the state and everyone who's interested, we are Minnesota. If you haven't seen the video, I wish I could play it for you. It is a real testament to the kinds of things we do on behalf of the citizens of Minnesota. It's a story we're telling again and again to prospective students, to their parents, to our business partners, and to our political leaders. So I encourage you to take a look at it if you haven't seen it. It's a wonderful 1 minute and 20-second video loaded on the main page of the university. The next story, though, that I want to tell you comes from my very own academic discipline, applied linguistics and teaching languages. And the story highlights the importance of applied research, scholarly activity, and it's an example of how a big idea and real-world thinking created something that contributed to the greater good. As faculty members, much of our efforts are rightly focused on excellent teaching and preparing our students for success. But teaching is only one aspect of our professional lives. We're expected to be active members of the scholarly community on campus, as well as in our disciplines. And throughout my career, I've contributed to my profession, oftentimes serving on scholarly editorial boards. And I had the pleasure a number of years ago of serving on a journal published by Oxford University Press. OUP, as its acronym has it known, was founded in 1586, long before most universities even existed. And it's the second oldest academic press in the world. Anybody know the oldest? Cambridge. They go back and forth over things like this. They really, they find each other as arch rivals. So I thoroughly enjoyed my 3-year term of service on the journal board. What's not to like? You get to work with academic colleagues from around the world who are at the forefront of their discipline, and you even get to occasionally make a trip to London for a meeting. And it was following one of these trips to London for one of the meetings that the editor invited me to visit OUP headquarters in Oxford. And so I had been to Oxford before as a tourist and as a visitor, but this time I was going to be a guest of the institution. I was absolutely thrilled. The press is housed in this neoclassical structure that was built in 1830. Upon arrival, I entered the main gate there. There was an employee waiting for me. He escorted me up to an ornate reception room where I then had lunch with the editor of the journal. And as the lunch drew to a close, she announced, "Steve, I've got permission to take you to the shrine." And I'm thinking, shrine? What could that be? I knew the Earl of Clarendon was a significant benefactor to the university. I also knew that Clarendon Press was a publishing imprint that OUP reserves for its most erudite publications. So I'm thinking, as we climb the stairs to the top floor of the building, I'm going to see photos of the Earl, maybe even some leftover remains in an urn, and I need to be thinking, okay, look moved, look respectful, be sure that, you know, you don't display any surprise. As my colleague unlocked the door at the top of the stairs and we entered this dimly lit gallery, wow. Wow. It was an applied linguist's dream. Enshrined in the gallery was a collection of artifacts and photos related to the Oxford English Dictionary. For short, the OED. The creation of the OED is the linguistic equivalent of a moonshot. And Simon Winchester chronicles this amazing academic achievement in The Meaning of Everything. How many of you have read The Meaning of Everything? No one? Okay, great. It's a good book, don't you think? I mean, even if you're not into lexicography, if you're not a philologist, if you're not into words, it's a great read.
I like the dictionary and the Mad Men better.
That is a subset. We're not going to go there, okay? Okay? The Professor and the Madman. Yes, no, we're not going there, but that's a sub-story of the OED story, and it's fascinating because it includes an American who was put in the first prison for the criminally insane built in the UK, built in Britain at the time, but, and he was housed, anyway, that's the other story. So, imagine for a moment that you're James Murray, the editor responsible for the OED project. And this is James Murray right there in his mortarboard with his long white beard on the cover of Winchester's book, surrounded by his assistants there who are assisting him with the creation of The Meaning of Everything. Your charge is to collect every word that exists in the English language and to document when it first entered the language as well as the nuances of the word. How do you do it? How long does it take? How much does it cost? And how do you persuade your sponsors of the importance of this monumental scholarly project? It may be hard to appreciate the significance of this project from our vantage point in the 21st century. Imagine, though, that you're in the middle of the 19th century. The notion of a comprehensive modern dictionary is new, and previous efforts have been totally unsuccessful. Given the increased levels of literacy, though, and the corresponding increased publication of texts of all types, it is important to establish the proper spelling, meaning, and use of words. Now, we credit the British Empire with spreading the English language worldwide for several hundred years. But the effective communication of the English language required English speakers, writers, and readers to have a shared understanding of each word. A comprehensive dictionary of the English language, therefore, became the big idea of its time among philologists and the learned elites. And lexicographers were the new academic specialists charged with building the world's dictionaries of written languages. But back to the big idea and the real world thinking. How do you pursue such a big idea? And how do you create in effect, an Uber dictionary in particular? James Murray applied some very real world thinking to solve the problem. He put out a call. We all put out calls for help. His was call for volunteers from every corner of the English-speaking and reading world. And more than 1,000 answered his call. Each volunteer was asked to send Murray a piece of paper that had the word, the phrase or sentence in which the word appeared, the year the word was used in the original text, and the name of the original source. For example, Shakespeare's Hamlet. Remember, it's the latter half of the 19th century, So each volunteer, whether the person is in the south of England, the south of Australia, the south of India, is putting on a small piece of paper and inserting it in an envelope and mailing it to 78 Banbury Road, Oxford, England, Murray's home. When the volume of slips of paper exceeded the space available in his home, he built in the garden behind it a shed. He called it the scriptorium. And there, he and his assistants, pictured in the cover here, would inventory each slip of paper and place it in folders with words that begin with the same letter of the alphabet. You can see them. You know what it looked like. You know, I have given lectures all over the world. I've given lectures, hundreds of them. I've never had the technology fail the way it failed today. And it worked fine in a classroom when I promote it. So there must be some things that it's telling me at this point. So, but bear with me. That was really the only picture left. The rest of it was a couple of bullet points that I'll share with you in a moment. So back to my point. They're inventorying these words. 3.5 million slips of paper were received for the first edition of the OED. Now, some of those volunteers were only sending a single envelope with a single piece of paper. But the most prolific volunteers, out of the 1,000 or more that were engaged in this activity, sent 100,000 slips of paper to Murray and his team over the course of developing the first edition of the OED. How long did the project take? Originally, it was estimated to take 10 years. In fact, from conception to completion, it took 67. And hence the shrine in the Oxford University Press building for this, what they consider to be the most significant, monumental academic achievement of the press to date. Murray himself dedicated 54 years of his life to the project. 54 years. When I get sort of bored with manuscript and I'm thinking, gee, I'm ready to maybe move to something else, I think about the kind of dedication 54 years would represent. So, you know, I try to keep it all in perspective. And the first edition was published in 1928. Anybody have any idea how many words were in the English language at that point? Well, you know, the little pocket dictionaries we get, about 50,000 words typically. They don't begin to hold all the, but if you've seen the volumes of the OED, 415,825 words in the first edition. In the 1989 subsequent edition, to show you how fast language is changing, over 615,000 words. So I just put that out there. You know, when you think about you can't remember the right word for something, well, there are a lot of words, so it's not surprising. So how much did this monumental project cost? 300,000 British pounds were spent on the first edition. 300,000 British pounds. In today's dollars, that represents 54 million US dollars for that effort. Imagine a university press today that would be willing to give you $54 million so that you could realize your applied research project. I just don't think we're going to find the level of resources nor the willingness to commit to that scale of activity. So, and I try to keep that in perspective too as I look for sources of support and sponsors for some of my academic activities. That said, the OED underscores the fact research and scholarly efforts require considerable time and they must be supported over the life of the project. As you know, serious scholarship isn't completed in a day, a month, or even a year in many cases. But most of us won't be able to devote 54 years to our research, nor receive $50 million to complete it. However, we do have the ability to commit institutional resources in greater amounts than we have in the recent past. And our campus is engaged in activities now, some of which will be realized through the graduate enrollment management draft plan that will support those on our campus at higher levels than in the past to engage in research, scholarly, and creative activities. I invite you to join me this year in making the case for that kind of investment and commitment. I know Provost Wells supports it. She shared as much with you today. For his efforts, Murray was knighted. Not something most of us are likely to achieve during our academic careers. Maybe only one or two of you. I know I won't. It also highlights the importance of recognizing faculty distinction and scholarly and creative achievements. This is a priority for the university going forward. It's in the current strategic plan. It is in the graduate enrollment management plan, which includes support of graduate faculty. I'm also committed to elevating the awareness of our faculty members' achievements, both those that are in the room today listening and those that aren't, and telling the story of how your work contributes to the greater good. And that is a story we cannot allow to not be told. We are compelled to tell it. It's the only way we're going to convince doubters that it remains in the public interest to have public universities that are supported in creating students that are going to make a difference in the future. The last story of the trilogy, as opposed to the tetralogy that we were going to share today, is a story that hasn't really been written and will unfold this year. It's the story of the College of Graduate Studies and Research. And it's a story about how the college intends to promote graduate education and advance the research, scholarship, and creative activity of you and our students. External support is critical to the future of research and graduate education on our campus, and I'm pleased to report, this is a slide you're not... Thank you, wherever you are. So I'm pleased to report that our faculty have continued to sort of raise the bar. And for the last 2 years, we've had record external support in the form of grants and contracts that our faculty have been able to obtain. And the fact is that that level of activity is going to produce the kinds of indirects that allow us to reinvest in faculty PIs, in departments, in colleges, and in other units on campus. Over $500,000 has been realized in both those fiscal years for reinvestment in the kinds of things that have led to that kind of success. And going forward, we have built an infrastructure. You may have heard of the affinity groups. That has been an effort that's been wildly successful. We have 5 affinity groups that we launched last academic year. We're adding 2 more this fall. If you haven't heard about it, you'll be getting notified of when those groups are meeting, where they're meeting, and I encourage you to join them. They're interdisciplinary groups of faculty and staff members who have interests in some of the areas that we have declared as having academic distinction for our institution, both current and aspirant areas. So I encourage you. That infrastructure that is being built through the affinity groups will contribute to increased future levels of external support to support our students and our faculty. Graduate applications, I'm pleased to report, are up slightly over 20% for this fall. More importantly, graduate enrollment is up 4.9% as of this point last academic year. I think that bodes well. It's an encouraging sign, and I'm committed to growing graduate enrollment and bringing the most highly qualified students to our campus so that they can benefit from the kinds of graduate programs and faculty members that we have engaged in the graduate enterprise. As you know, the university raised the minimum stipend for graduate assistant awards
from $4,500 per semester to $5,000, and this will support our graduate students in a way that is demonstrable, and it also will make our awards more competitive going forward. I would note that that represents new commitments at the level of $375,000 a year more for GA appointments. That's not a small sum when you look at the total resources available for an institution like ours. We added an interim position in the Graduate Studies Office, as I alluded to. Jennifer Chelstrom is the person that has been recruited to fill that. The person is responsible for developing and implementing a range of strategic recruitment and retention activities, many of which are included in actions in the draft comprehensive graduate enrollment plan document that will be circulated in the coming month or two for feedback, consultation, advice, and revision through our typical shared governance framework and mechanism. She is also committed to working with graduate coordinators to promote your programs and to assist you with your work. Finally, the campus-wide work group will soon complete its paper draft of the university's first comprehensive graduate enrollment management plan. Once the plan's been reviewed, revised, and adopted by the campus community, it will shape our response to a future that's not what it used to be. I'm confident the plan will help us garner additional support, both external and internal, for the graduate enterprise. I look forward to working with all of you to ensure that that happens. And in closing, we're in an era of disruption. The status quo in higher education is no longer an affordable option for us. In the face of unprecedented challenges, it's more than ever important for us to tell our stories, to highlight how our work contributes to the greater good, and I look forward to working with you to ensure that we get that story out. Thank you very much, and at this point we're going to transition, and the staff and faculty co-facilitators that were instrumental in moving the work of our campus-wide work group forward will be sharing with you some of the specifics related to our activities. So I was asked to sort of frame the charge, and then the group has different pieces of kind of elaborating on the work that's been conducted to date. This expanded group, as Marilyn alluded to, included representatives from all the bargaining units and had 20 FA representatives appointed to it. And the charge was to develop the university's first comprehensive graduate enrollment management plan and to align it with other planning documents that have been adopted by the institution. Those include the university's strategic plan and the university's strategic enrollment plan, under which the graduate enrollment plan is a subset, okay? And we also consulted a variety of campus resources that could inform that work. The group was to draft a document that includes the goals, objectives, actions to meet graduate enrollment targets, to increase diversity of the graduate population, to expand the reach and impact of the university's graduate programs, regionally, nationally, and internationally, to promote and market graduate programs, and to enhance the services and support provided to graduate students and faculty. Additionally, the group looked very carefully at the graduate assistantship program as it exists and made recommendations for improving that, and I think that was a very, very important component of the work of the group. They met for 5 sessions As I said, there were 37 members that participated in it. 20 of them were FA members. The group drew on multiple sources of information contained in previous reports. They conducted a faculty survey in the spring that many of you, I hope, responded to, because those data informed actions and recommendations that are coming out of the group's deliberations and work this summer. We also interviewed deans at our IPEDS peers. Our IPEDS peers are institutions that are within the same peer group nationally, and we had telephone conference calls with a number of, in effect, the counterparts of the position that I hold here at the university, so we could gain insights into things they were doing that we might adopt as best practices. So that was another source of interview data that we used to inform the work of the group. So that's basically the overview of the charge and kind of some of the sources of information we sought to include in our deliberations and conversations, and ultimately what we have developed as proposed actions and recommendations.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, here we go. Thank you very much, Steve. So that was a bit of the process. I'm going to share a bit about some of the key recommendations and some of the goals and objectives to kind of help situate us. We have two subgroups. There was a lot of people in that room for our work group. We didn't all sit, the 37 of us, together. We actually separated into the GA group, to Shauna and Chris, and then into a general graduate enrollment management group, which is Beth and I. So I want to show just generally that process that Steve delineated for us. Kind of came up with about 3 broad recommendations. And I want to summarize those and then give you the first goal for the general enrollment plan. So the first recommendation that we have is to really utilize data analysis to make data-informed decisions, to really make some good decision-making as we go forward, looking to enhance and increase graduate enrollment and the programs that we really value and want to kind of raise up and have the ability to, what would be needed to be done to help them be supported in the long term. Next, as the provost kind of mentioned, we have a really great opportunity to increase the visibility of our campus as a leader in graduate education. And there's a lot of different action items that we address that might help us do so. Next, we really want to promote a climate that supports graduate and faculty in many different ways to do so. We want to support their research and support their teaching. And we want to really create a climate that is inclusive and supportive to all different graduate students who come to our campus, whether that's on campus or also online. We have a strong online presence, and we want to make sure that they have access to the same resources as those that come on campus and feel part of this institution. And there's really a graduate feel of the institution as well. So with that, I'm going to kind of summarize that by saying a constant theme that we heard and that was expressed was that we really wanted to support and streamline and structure our internal processes and infrastructure so that they are solid and we can grow in a smart strategic direction from now. So with that in mind, the first kind of a goal that we had was to enhance graduate success and award completion. And under that goal, we have 2 objectives, and they're kind of aligned, or very aligned, they mirror each other. So the first objective is to extend and expand support for graduate students to successfully proceed through the graduate studies. So that is a smooth process from application to graduation. And there's a couple action items that I'll just note that we have listed. One of them is to discuss the current and federal criteria for full-time graduate students' status, to expand support, and some ideas that we had were to have a comprehensive graduate orientation along with maybe a program-specific orientations that you house to go over policies and procedures that are really useful for being part of this campus. To have a streamlined electronic approach to graduation forms, including capstone forms, graduation, and admissions. We've already made great progress in. A big shout out to Jen, who responds to my phone calls at 3:30 on Friday about applications. So we also were thinking about a creation of a graduate student center, much like the undergraduate research center, but kind of a home base for all things that graduate students could then use. And we can leverage the current resources that we have here on campus to make that quite streamlined as well. Really help provide professional services and development, much like we have for CEDAR faculty. And next, we want to have online and graduate and on-campus students have access to resources, and maybe in a more refined manner than we do right now. And the last one for that kind of objective of helping expand student support is maybe evaluating what our graduate students need. We don't really know what their experience is like here and what's getting in the way and what's going really well. So we thought it would be useful to have a student survey this coming year or soon. And last to mirror that, objective 2 is to develop policies and procedures that support faculty and their work. And so if you add into that work to look at policy for compensation formula for capstone projects, including APP, internships, thesis, etc., dissertation, to look at how we allocate time for graduate coordinators and create a more system-level method for that, and to look at how we can improve access for faculty to technology to streamline our work with technology. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Beth to explain a couple more goals.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Beth Bishoner, and I'm faculty in the College of Education. So as Max said, I'm going to highlight 2 more goals that are specifically related to the graduate enrollment plan before Shauna and Chris discuss graduate assistantships. So the first goal that I'm going to explain for you is goal number 2, which states that we plan to strategically identify areas of potential enrollment growth and maintenance with the overall goal of increasing graduate enrollment. The related action items to this goal really highlight the importance of developing an ongoing process for the evaluation of graduate programs that takes into consideration the data gathered in the context of the uniqueness of programs within the state, their potential for enrollment growth, and future workforce needs within our communities. The second related objective is to enhance support for graduate programs. Underneath this action item, objective, we plan to use the data from the strategic planning process to make sure that our programs are adequately funded, that we have an opportunity to invest in continued success of programs, and also the ability to flexibly invest in new programs. Additionally, underneath the idea of enhancing support, we have specific action items related to marketing, as well as infrastructure for communication with both potential students and current students. Objective 3 is to recruit and retain a diverse graduate student population. Action items underneath this objective are related to identifying target markets of students based on the unique needs of their academic interests and ethnic and racial identities, and to communicate the value of our programs in a targeted and personalized manner. And there are 2 other objectives that are related to the second goal item, but they're related to graduate assistantships. And so Shauna and Chris will highlight some of those. The next goal that I'm going to highlight for you is to advance the culture of and structure for research, scholarship, and creative achievements of faculty and graduate students. The first objective underneath this goal is, and this is going to sound redundant, to support the research, scholarship, and creative achievements of faculty and graduate students. Action items related to this objective are to increase the financial allocation and support for graduate students as they travel to present their work and incur additional research costs. Additionally, we're proposing a more robust commitment to recognizing and supporting faculty research endeavors, which note the productivity and quality within our university-wide system and increase the visibility of research on the university website. Some of our additional ideas include providing reassigned time or reallocation of tasks in order to concentrate on research and recognition of research, monetary or other means. The second related objective is to expand the university's impact regionally, nationally, and internationally through faculty and student success in applied learning and research. And the action items related to this objective really focus on increasing support for obtaining and managing external grants, contracts, and private giving to support faculty and graduate student research.
Hi. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Mickle, and I'm the Director of Graduate Studies. Again, it's just as a reminder, all this work was done within 5 meetings over the course of the summer. Before I turn it over to Shauna for the recommendations, which you probably really want to hear, I thought it was valuable in how we came to these recommendations, and I'll try to be brief. The GA subgroup followed an initial process where the basic principles of graduate assistantship appointments, a non-glamorous part of the graduate assistant process, if you will, the appointment process, advertising, hiring, notifying the graduate assistants of their appointment, assessing the graduate student, the graduate assistant's experience. We also realized that the current practices and policies perhaps worked well, perhaps, when the university was, when the graduate assistant arena was simpler and not quite so complicated and nuanced. But current policies are now not well publicized and in many cases obscure. And people contact the graduate studies office to say, how do I do this? How do I do this? How does this happen? There's a problem here. And it should be more transparent to the entire community. And we also concluded early in the process that the GA positions are perhaps not used as well as they might be to strategically advance university stated goals and aspirations. Throughout the work group sessions, at least in our group, the other group used small groups perhaps more than we did. Our group consensus was sought by capturing in real time the discussion and the notes and the observations and the points, and that in some ways we were able to capture the draft of the group's final recommendations during those meetings by capturing those in real time. And then in June and subsequent meetings, we continued to build upon the topics previously established. We started to collect information from our IVED's peers. Not only information, but also examples about graduate assistant assessments, graduate assistant appointments, and more importantly, graduate assistant and graduate student handbooks. It was quite revealing what other schools are doing better than I'm currently doing, we're currently doing. In July and August, that's when we started to expand into small groups and started to finalize our draft comments and to try to determine how we might best enfold those into the larger graduate enrollment management report.
Hi, everyone. Okay. My name is Shauna Peterson-Brown. I come from the Department of Psychology. And I'll just tell you a bit about what goals we are hoping to contribute to within the GA subgroup, as well as what our objectives and primary action items were. So one goal that we hope to contribute to in a major way, which Beth and Mac have not yet introduced to you, is to enhance the quality of that graduate assistant experience, to improve processes and procedures related to GA awards, and to explore alternative financial models for supporting GA positions. And just to be clear, when I reference GAs, we're talking about all types of GAs. So research assistants, teaching assistants, as well as administrative graduate assistants as well. So really the objectives that are under that major goal have to do with basically tightening and refining the logistics around employing GAs. I think Chris referred to kind of the less glamorous aspects of the GA enterprise. So one key action here is to create, maintain, and disseminate a handbook that covers recruitment, selection, appointment, training, and evaluation of GAs, as well as possibly other issues as well. And the reason that I want to highlight that one is because if we are able to do that, that will confirm that we've done the rest of our work that really feeds into that. Those other key actions that really feed this handbook, or handbooks, because we may need one that is more student-focused, another that's more hiring unit-focused, but key actions that would allow the creation of such a handbook would include to identify or create an evaluation that can be used to provide feedback on a regular basis to GAs to ensure that they are receiving the feedback that they need to be able to improve their performance. So that's number one, or one of them. A second one would be to improve the appointment process. Right now the appointment process is inefficient and doesn't always result in clear expectations of GAs and hiring units. So to improve that process, And then a third, I think, important action item under this tightening and refining goal is to create and provide university training to supplement the wonderful, in many cases, in most cases, training that hiring units are providing, but just to ensure that GAs have that overall training on university policies and procedures and other issues that are likely to impact many or most GAs, such as FERPA, those sorts of things. So that's one set of our objectives that fits under that goal that I had mentioned to you. The second set of objectives that we had is really contributing to the overall, one of the overall goals of recruiting highly qualified students, and in cases where it's appropriate, to increase graduate enrollment. So that second set of objectives for the GA group really focused on utilizing GA lines strategically to help us recruit more students and to recruit more highly qualified students in particular. So some key action items under that set of objectives would be to review the process, or to have a process as well as a specific timeline to review GA compensation to ensure that GAs are compensated competitively. If we look at historically how this process has been pursued, it's not as systematic as it should be, and also, therefore, it's not happening as frequently as it should be. So we really need to be sure that we're compensating, again, our GAs adequately as well as competitively. We also discussed the strategic allocation of GA lines to support university goals and strategic priorities, as well as hiring unit needs. Currently, this process could stand to be improved, the way that we allocate those GA lines. Finally, we'd like to explore alternate models for funding GAs, which could include external grants. It may include the collaboration with the foundation, as well as alternate models for awarding GAs, which could be, let's say, merit-based. That seems to be one way that we can really use GA lines to further that goal of recruiting high-quality graduate students or highly qualified graduate students. All right.
I'm Christelle Seth. I work in research and sponsored programs. Our office is helping, and I'll keep this brief because I think we're done in the next 25 minutes. It'll be less than that. We are going to be, we've been helping, Ann in our office has created, working with IT, a landing page for the efforts that this work group has done. And so obviously this process of shared governance is also transparent. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what that website will look like, and you'll be receiving links to then find it in the emails that are going to come out and more formally announce what you've heard this afternoon. You'll receive information that documents the charge that the group originally received. There will be a schedule of events. Obviously, this is part of that process, but it started last week even at the President's Retreat. So you'll see a list of the upcoming events. A few of those, not to mention them all, will include, union executive teams, union membership meetings, graduate coordinators, MSSA, open forums, meet and confer meetings, President's Cabinet. That's just a brief overview of the list of events that will be rolled out this semester. There will be a link to the resources that the group referenced from past efforts done by the campus, and then also materials that will be made available. The draft plan, obviously, handouts that have been given to different groups, and then to wrap it up, you'll see a list of the members that participated in both the graduate enrollment management work group and then also the graduate assistantship plan work group. And we will have a link to collect your feedbacks and your comments throughout that draft process. And then obviously you'll see the members listed, so if you'd like to speak to anybody individually, you'll have that information as well.
And we're anticipating that will go live in the next week or two. So
We'll send out a notification to the graduate faculty and to the subgroups that have been involved in this so that you know when it's live. And that basically concludes what we formally had prepared for you today and wanted to share. We do have a few minutes. We have refreshments out there, so I encourage you to, to hang about a bit if you'd like to talk informally afterwards. But if there are any questions that the group or that you want to direct to me, I'd be happy to facilitate a Q&A. Anyone have? Mary?
I just want to know why we didn't get some sort of a written summary of this in advance.
Yeah, that was the intent. We worked hard on it, and it is, at this point, I don't particularly feel it's in a form that I'm comfortable with, and I don't mean in terms of the content. We're not afraid of anything that's in it. It's just not in a very meaningful form. Now, if you would like the handout that was distributed at the President's Retreat, that is available.
That would have been helpful.
Okay. So thank you for that point, and I will make sure that that's posted. The intent was that that would be posted on the webpage when it goes live. So thank you. Other questions? Yes, Lee.
So Steve, you mentioned that pay went up from 4,500 to 5,000.
4,500 to 5,000.
5,000.
Yes.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, we're still quite a ways behind some of our sister institutions on that. Is there a likelihood that we can continue to increase our TA pay next year?
What the good question. And to be clear, we have a floor for GA appointments that are funded out of the general fund dollars that the university dedicates to graduate assistant awards. That's the floor that was raised from $4,500 per semester to $5,000 per semester. There are other GA awards that are made, for example, the doctoral awards, and any awards that are made through NAI funds, non-allocated, non-state revenue funds, or through external grants and contracts. Individuals are free to set those for their GAs at whatever level they care to set them at. So what was done was the floor of the general fund dollar supported GA-ships was raised. So I just want to be clear that there's no restriction placed on a PI that gets an external grant and can write one or more GA ships into it. If you want to make it 6,000 or 7,000, you can, you're free to do that. To your broader question about going forward, what are we going to do to continue to make progress relative to our peers? One thing that the GA group recommended was we did not have an institutional process whereby we formally would review stipends so that we could recommend increases and then find the way to fund them. We're proposing that there be a mechanism put in place that's similar to what we do with student health, that periodically we make raises to those hourly rates when we look at cost of living increases, when we look at minimum wage increases. And so the proposal is that go through the budget submeet process on a regular basis. Typically now, I think it's every 3 years. So anyway, so that we don't just make this a one-time thing and then we wait to act 5 more years or 10 more years before we have a mechanism in place that makes this more routine. As opposed to ad hoc. So there was recognition among the group that would be helpful. Yes?
Sorry, just to follow up quickly. So it's just that it makes a big difference in recruitment, right? What we can offer to incoming.
That was recognized. It's been a concern. The 2010 report, if anyone's familiar with the graduate task force that looked at 2010, we knew that that was a problem then. We recommended a change. And this is how many years later? 8 years later, we finally got one this spring that's in effect this fall. So we want to build in a process so that it isn't just something that emerges from a recommendation and we do it once and then we don't have a mechanism for revisiting that. Your broader question, though, about what can we do to remain competitive, and in a time of limited resources, that's where the kind of external activity that brings indirect dollars back to the university that can be redistributed becomes an increasingly valuable form of support. The foundation, that's another fundraising arm of the university that can help us build capacity to not only pay competitive rates for our GAs, but to expand the number of GA ships that we're able to offer. And I think the group, I was really pleased with the vigorous discussion and sort of brainstorming about what we can do as an institution to ensure we remain competitive relative to our peers when it comes to those and some of the other issues that emerged during the conversation. Someone, yes?
You all made some very positive recommendations about graduate assistants. I was wondering, since not all graduate assistants come out of the graduate college, are those recommendations will they be applied to all grad assistants at the institution, including those that come out of the Division of Student Affairs or any of the other divisions?
Yeah, Jackie, that was an understatement. Not all of the GA ships come out of the College of Graduate Studies and Research. When in previous years, there were approximately 45. At one point, I think there were as many as 50. It's down to 39.5. I find that, amazing. And so I'm trying to think of ways that we can increase that. So that's just kind of an aside about out of the over 500 that we award, 39.5, the person in this role has direct ability to work with departments and to receive your requests and to actually respond to them, with an award of an assistantship. So I think that weighed heavily on the deliberations of the GA subgroup, and they were looking at ways that we know we can't take the pie and slice it up different ways because there are winners and losers. The only way we can genuinely make progress, I think there was recognition, was making it a bigger pie. How do we do that? And I think we were looking at some ways that we would change the financial models that we're currently working within the institution and change some of the financial models that we have some control over, which are these externally supported things and fundraising that we can do. So, I'm sorry, I give kind of long answers, but the point I'm making here is I wanted to provide enough context for your question. And the second part of your question was that will the proposals that the group considered and are recommending, would they apply only to those 39.5 assistantships that are within the College of Graduate Studies and Research? The realization was that when that is such a tiny fraction of all GA ships, it wouldn't have very much effect if it only applied to those. So in working in consultation and cooperation with the campus community, the intent would be to come up with something that would benefit all the GA ships we have to work with, that we would be doing something that's more unified, thoughtful, and consensus-oriented than what is a very ad hoc, widely dispersed sort of allocation. I won't even call it a model. I mean, I don't think it's not particularly directed or intentional. It's just kind of sprung up. It's organic. It's the way we've been doing things. So the answer to your question is, the hope is that it isn't limited to just those 39.5 because it's not going to have much effect if it is. So. Question, yeah.
I did just want to say that I echo Mary's statement about getting some of this information.
Sure.
But also along the lines, I do appreciate, and I think that whatever we can do to promote this, bringing faculty or bringing staff and administrative support to graduate programs more in line with support you get, as tough as that is for undergraduate, that would help, because it seems like a lot of this work falls on graduate faculty.
Absolutely.
Like normally for undergraduate things,
we have lots of other areas that provide that sort of, yeah.
So maybe the more you can sing that tune, the more we can back you up as a chorus. I mean, because it doesn't get the kind of backup that we'd like.
Sure, they'd love to speak to that.
A little bit. Thank you for that comment. What I've noticed about myself is usually I'm sort of an engaging person, I think, for those of you that know me, and then I get a microphone in front of my face and I was reading like a robot. So what might not have come through in some of the, and again, we're trying to be brief, really generative conversations. And I think that your comment was the foundation for almost every conversation that we had.
I spent a lot of time thinking about, a lot of tables were created, and we would have the action item that connected to the objective and the goal. Who are our leaders and our partners on campus that would help us achieve that goal, and just kind of a brainstorming session related to that. So every item that we've mentioned has a connecting partner or partners that would help that be achieved, and it includes an array of people on campus, including administrative support and key entities, whether it's GRASP or what have you. So that's definitely will be present in the final report, which is already a quite lengthy document, and we just wanted to keep on refining it before we sent it out. So, yeah.
Other questions? Comments? Yes?
I want to say I'm really excited about, I've talked to Chris about this a couple times, I'm in anthropology, and we developed like a 2.5-day grad orientation program for our students. I'm really excited about a university-wide process. But I hope that, I know there's a lot of programs on campus that have really intensive orientation programs that their faculty have invested a lot of time in developing, that a substantial amount of that material could be transitioned into a campus-wide one. So I hope that there'll be some involvement with what we already have and not just a rollout of here's our new program and ignore what English and anthropology and all these other programs that have really intensive TA stuff already built, you know, what they already have in the works.
And I think you raised a really important point that I want to underscore. This is not about superseding what exists. You happen to be in a department. I came from a department where there was a robust orientation program for graduate students. But there are other departments that are very small, that have relatively few graduate students, and may not have anything at all in place. So this is more about building a floor, and then what is relevant and meaningful across the institution that would benefit graduate students, make them feel part of a larger community of graduate students. And in no way is it to supersede or in any way take away from what occurs within departments and programs already. And I love the idea of bringing some of that forward to see where it might fit and be relevant and applicable across the entire institution. So no, I welcome that, and that's a great comment.
I'd like to echo what Chelsea just said, but also, other than the call going out for who wants to be on the task force, there has been, at least to my recollection, no solicitation of, hey, do departments out there have a grad handbook? Or what are you doing for your orientation programs? I'd be happy to share ours with you. It's been pretty effective for about the past 35 years, and we update it every other year.
So as that action item moves forward to implementation, then inviting the kinds of submissions from departments where they have robust orientation materials already available, and integrating aspects of that into a broader opportunity to conduct graduate students to the university. I do also see that some of the ideas that have been surfaced by the group represent things that are more broad and might not be as department specific, and that we maybe haven't been as effective in the past at communicating that to every new incoming graduate students. Yeah.
My point in particular about the grad handbooks is we have things in there that are germane to all students.
Yeah, good. Then those become the basis for building the best general orientation and graduate student handbooks we can for the graduate community.
I think part of what Don is getting at is also something that's my concern. So when I can forget which office it is, they instituted that long training on sexual assault for the campus, which is great, total champion for it. Nobody was informed that that was going to be happening. So I had students that were having to complete that online orientation, and then I'm covering the same material. And I think we have a lot of stuff in play that if you're going to take that on, we want it to be the same degree that we've been doing it. And know if we're going to hand off some of what we've been doing to the grad college as a whole, I want to make sure it's getting covered. And I also want to make sure I'm not putting my grad students through an hour on the same FERPA information as you're going to do. And there seems to have been some fallout when we've rolled out these new educational modules or online trainings. They don't communicate it to those of us who are already doing the work on the ground. And I think that's a really important thing to consider in this whole process.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise it's going to bother our grad students. They're going to be like, I'm getting hit with 3 training modules on FERPA people. Yeah.
Diane?
So I have 2 concerns. One, it stems from what Mary said, and I appreciate your words, Mary. We don't communicate very well. And I appreciate your work on this group. I know you worked this summer and put a lot of hours in, but even a bulleted list might have helped me coming in this room and understanding. I think the second piece that's resonated for me in what you said, Stephen, it's frustrating, but it needs to be a financial remodel.
Correct.
There is a lot of perspective and focus still that remains on this campus for undergraduate funding in a number of areas. And a lot of what we're still doing is we are marketing and we're doing things on our backs. I know, on faculty. And I know that the plan is to move forward, but when that's couched, at the same time of saying, but by the way, if you work on your external funding, we'll have more. Where do we go? We need to have support, and sometimes that even means more personnel.
Correct.
But in a context where we're being told, well, when there are retirements, there's no guarantee they'll be replaced. Those are some really significant mixed messages that leave me with great concern about the future of graduate education on this campus and for our future. So those are my comments. They leave me concerned.
Sure.
I think we're making great headway, but if we're in a catch-22, how do I spend my time developing and worrying about external funding when I'm marketing and recruiting? And I know we want to do better, but part of the conversation has to be is how this campus is going to shift its thinking in terms of, like you said, wow, this is $100,000 towards grad, but it's only affected 39 stipends.
No,
That's
excuse me.
Okay.
It's affected 380 stipends.
Okay. But even at that, with the number of graduate students, and where the future, we're looking at more population of graduate students on college campuses than we are undergraduate. So where and how do we get the administrators on this campus to comprehend that? And you and I were in the initial grad, how many years ago?
Yeah, that's a danger being here too long.
I know, but the danger is that you see repetitive patterns.
Right, and I'll just tell you that if I didn't believe that we had an opportunity to make a difference
Yep.
I'm not interested in helping forge a campus consensus around the kinds of things that we believe need to change. I do believe that we're at an inflection point with graduate education and research, and we're either going to get better and we're going to do more of it, or we're going to do less of it. And I'm, from a career point of view, committed to what I've spent my life doing, which is engaged in graduate education and scholarship. And I believe that we've got the opportunity, we've developed a plan, and I think that now we have to have financial models. And when you said only external, maybe I didn't clarify. There has to be some revision to the internal financial models, because we can't raise enough external money through a foundation or through government grants and contracts. So without a commitment to taking some of the current pie and figuring out, or creating incentives for, as enrollment grows, redirecting that enrollment growth and the tuition revenue from it towards investing in the endeavor, we are going to be restricted in how much we can sustain, and will be precluded from meaningfully increasing our levels of activity. So I completely...
So visually what I'm hearing, and this has been a consistent pattern, is the solution is more on your backs as a College of Graduate Studies, more on our backs as graduate faculty, and somehow that pattern has to change. And breaking up the pie internally has to be part of that very pointed conversation.
And that is in recommendations that the group arrived at over the summer. And so I do look forward to those who care the most about this effort to be involved in helping support the case, because that's what's going to be made once the plan's adopted. And adopting it piecemeal is not a winning strategy. So I'm going to be looking for support from the graduate faculty and those that care about moving us forward to be voices for a comprehensive plan is not an ad hoc plan by definition. So a comprehensive plan takes into consideration everything we need to change, do, and the resources we need to do it. And that's going to require some changes to the financial models that we've been operating under. So I completely concur with your observation, and I'm sorry if I conveyed that it's only outside dollars that are going to be available for us to move this forward.
It may have been my mishearing, but I also think part of our struggle,
we're having a conversation,
faculty, quite frankly, is communication. We get busy with our work, we're siloed.
Sure.
And I kept coming up with that term for Marilyn at every meeting I went to. I think she got tired of hearing it. But I also heard her use those words today, so hey, maybe records are good things. We really have to become more unified, whether it's how we do orientations or how we justify what our needs are. But we have to be a full force.
No, we have to move forward together. I mean, if we're factionalized or fractured in any way, I mean, it dilutes our voice. It dilutes our ability to, I think, argue persuasively that this is the direction we want to go. This is what we need. This is what we're headed towards and want to do. And that's why I'm, as a member of the faculty for years, I mean, I've cared passionately about this, and that's why I'm up here. That's why I've been working with this group. That's why I'm here to enlist your support and to involve us in a collaborative effort that I think will change the future that we're going to have to be capable of, working in. So, any other questions, points? Yes.
In debating that question, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I'm going to send it your way.
Good.
So I've appreciated your leadership in
this whole process. But I'm correct in stating that you're in this position on an interim basis?
I am indeed.
Can you tell us anything about your status regarding being in position?
My status? I have no status. I'm just one person. I can tell you that I know that the intent is to move forward with a search for a permanent AVP for research and dean of graduate education. My understanding is I've heard that that there's interest in beginning that process this fall semester. So I have no idea, beyond that. But I think it is a critical time. I do think that the institution needs leadership in a role like this. Whether I'm the right person or not, that's not that important. It doesn't factor into my thinking or what I think we need to do as an institution. I'm speaking strictly as a graduate faculty member who's been here long enough and watched enough efforts made at trying to advance the graduate enterprise to feel that we've got to do something. And so I'm just pleased to have had the opportunity to be part of the conversation this spring and summer, and to have the opportunity to share with the group of you who are here today how important we think all this is, and what we're hoping that we can launch once we get through the consultation process of what the final form of this plan is going to end up being, and get on with implementing it. And I really do think that that's important. Whether I'm part of that, longer-term process or not, that's not something I'm spending any time thinking about at this point. So, any other comments? Okay. Wow.
Steve, I've got a quick question. Sure. Earlier, forgive me, I don't remember your name, but the...
Mac?
I always forget his name.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the second lady with the computer.
Oh, Beth.
You mentioned some of the objectives were to identify some of the smaller grad programs and provide assistance in recruitment, whatever, maintenance, as the new terminology is. I'm a small grad program. I'm a one-man show, and I got some more bad news today. How are you going to target these programs to help them? Do I have to come forward? What's the next step for me? I'm a one-man show, and I'm going to be for a while.
So, Andy, do you come to the grad coordinator meetings? Are you?
I have been.
Yeah, okay. So that would be the mechanism for, sharing your needs, your concerns. We've also hired another position to help grad coordinators with promoting their programs, refining their materials. We are inviting the integrated marketing team to take a look at things. We have a focus group that was done with some pilot, I think 8 pilot programs that was conducted over the end of spring semester and summer. So I think communicating your interest through the next meeting, and prior to that, reaching out to the grad studies office and expressing some of the ways you think you might benefit from the services and resources that we have in that office would be one way to start. I recognize this is the week before classes, so we'd be looking at what can be done to recruit students for your program. And I don't know whether you admit once a year or once an academic year, or whether you admit every semester. But those are things I committed, and so is the team, to working with you and other grad coordinators as quickly as possible render support that we might.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you very much. And there are some light refreshments outside if you care to pick them up on the way out. And I appreciate very much your commitment to what we're all engaged in trying to promote. And have a great academic year and a great fall semester.